sort of due dates on things because you've got some of them set to open in 2050.
Oh, okay. Which ones?
Lab 12 and Lab 10.
That's because there's nothing due for those. I haven't created an assignment for those yet.
Ah, okay.
I should
Yeah,
actually close those to avoid. I'll hide those to avoid confusion.
yeah. I was like, it says due May 14th, and it's like opens January 2050, and I was like,
Yeah. So like the lab 10 is supposed to be like, I don't know, hide those. The lab 10 is supposed to be like more object oriented programming, but you guys are already getting plenty of work on that with your
Lab 9.
yeah, well, with your lab 9 and your game projects. So I don't think you guys need anything for that. For chapter 12, there's a pre-lab that you just do a quiz on Geeks for Geeks, which I think is like which I think will help. It's hard to create a lab for exception handling because that's just something you should be doing anyways for all your stuff. So it would really be just me coming up with another assignment. But you can just as easily have exception handling in your milestone.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, like I said, it's because I posted on the thing already.
okay.
Yeah, because the go deeper again thing was I was planning on actually offloading a lot of that initializing values for.
Oh yeah, 100% you should do that. And
Yeah,
I was gonna do it. I had an idea for a demo. I don't know if I'll do it today. I'll probably do it next week. But basically, I was going to do a demo where, just for demo purposes, I was going to define a bunch of like dummy objects, and I was going to have that handled in a separate class.
yeah,
So, where possible, it is always good in object-oriented programming um, to delegate responsibility to different classes. One of the things that a really useful tip that one of my instructors gave me was, for any given class or method, you should be able to say what it does in like a couple sentences at most. The second like you start adding compound sentences, it just start cutting things out, put it in separate classes. Like if you have something like this initializes the object which has these properties, and then it prepares it to be packaged this other thing. Like, why not just have one object that initializes it and another object that modifies it for use by another object, right? Like,
yeah.
it's better to delegate that responsibility. Um, any questions about object-oriented programming and such? It's a very open topic. It's if any of you guys are confused about anything, be it just semantics of using classes, or you want to go back and review something else from earlier in the semester, like, this is your guys' day. This is literally just a review day. And if no one has questions, then I'll call the class early.
Sounds good. Yeah,
I worry that some of you guys aren't asking questions because you just want to leave early and you don't want to be that guy who asks a question keeps people here longer. But bear in mind, people can just leave whenever the hell they want. So if they don't want to be here, they can leave. But if you do have questions, you should ask, because I get a lot of emails and messages on Discord of people like, hey, I don't understand what's going on. Like, I'm so far behind. I'm so confused. Like, you guys should be in here asking questions about what you don't understand, or asking for demos, something, so I can help you guys get caught back up, right?
mhm.
But if you're just here quiet, like, I don't know who you are, other than like, that someone with this name in Discord messaged me, but yeah, like, I don't know who you are here in Discord, or excuse me, I don't know who you are here in Zoom. So you should speak up and ask questions if you feel like you're lost or confused.
I have a question.
Sure.
Um, I don't know. Well, I'm kind of stuck on how to do the part of Project 9 where we have to add and deposit funds to the bank account.
Sure.
Oh yeah, the worker class. That one's sort of interesting
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you don't really define it with an initialized sort of thing. You're just using it as sort of storage for all the methods. It's
That's what
weird.
it is. That's what a worker class is. It just has a bunch of functions. So those functionalities that I want, I want them to be in a class called worker. And the reason I'm doing it that way is so that you guys get in the habit of calling public functions from a worker class. Yeah, when you're one that's responsible for holding the entire list of customers, that's the database, and another class responsible for performing actions on the bank account. The worker.java class. Yeah. So the worker.java class is just a class that has these functionalities that can perform these functionalities. So when we say we want something to perform a functionality, what does that usually mean in Java semantics? Like when we want something to be able to do something, what do we usually use in Java for that?
Methods.
Exactly. Does that answer your question a bit?
Well, I kind of had an inkling that we need to use methods, but I just don't know how to go about adding depositing funds. Are we supposed to take user input?
I'm going
And
to show
are
you
we
guys.
supposed to
Okay.
call a variable from one of the classes?
This is a good question. I have a good idea of how to answer it. Here's a hint that I gave an old class. Did you know that suppose I have a class here called Bob, and Bob has let me pull the chat. Let's say Bob has int age and Boolean is sick, right? We want to know Bob, how old Bob is and if Bob is sick. Now let's just make these private. Or here, we call it patients. Let's say we're writing software for a hospital. And I should rename this actually. Okay. Public patient, int age, Boolean is sick. Actually, you know, we'll default the is sick value. We just want to know how old they are. This dot age equals age is sick equals false. We'll just say by default they're not sick. And then we'll have public void set is sick. Sick. We want it to be that once we create a record, maybe we should make a setter for the age as well. Public void set age, age, this dot age equals age. So we've got our setters and we've got our getters for our private variables. And bear in mind, just because a variable is private doesn't mean you always need to make a setter getter for it. Some variables should be private because that's something that you only want this class to use. You don't want other people to have access to that in any capacity. It's perfectly okay to not have a setter getter for every single private variable. Public void set get age, age. Sick. Actually, yeah, I'll just keep the same name convention going. Return oh. Int in. Okay, so we have a class patient over there, and then let's just say I create a patient Bob. And Bob is 37 years old. Okay. There's a neat little thing that I could do. And obviously this is not going to be a one-to-one, but just to show you guys. Void print patient records. We can pass a patient object. You can pass any kind of object into a method, and then, you can pass any kind of object as a parameter, even custom objects that we create. To Java, this is no different than you giving it an integer or a string. This is just some kind of data. It's an object. that we pass. And we have our patient here, and let's say we want to print out system out printf, and we'll say, oh, our patient should probably have a name too, right? String name. And we'll make it so that you can only get the name. You can't set a new name. Public string get name. Which kind of makes sense if you think about it for the purpose of records, because once when you create a record for a patient, that's just, you just want it to be for that patient. You don't want to keep changing the names, or you don't want to keep you don't want to keep changing the patient's name and stuff on there. Once when they put the patient's name, that's its name. Anyways, this is my printf patient dot get name. Oops, that's not how we do it. Is years old and is sick. String sick equals patient dot get is sick. If this is true, then this is sick. Otherwise, it is not sick. So then let's put our variables for printf patient dot get name, patient dot get age, and then sick. So if we say print or self dot print patient records, and then we pass in Bob, not bots, Bob, we run our program. Patient Bob is 37 years old, and the reason why I printed all caps is because I made this %s capital in with the printf. If you make a %s or %c capital, it will print out that string or character as a capital. Patient Bob is 37 years old and is not sick. And let's say before we said Bob.set is sick is equal to true. I've run this again. Patient Bob is 37 years old and is sick, right? Because we have this ternary operator here to set whether they're sick or not. Essa, does this kind of give you more of a hint of how you should be handling passing a customer into the worker class?
Yeah. I realized that I just need to create getters and setters.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, the getters and setters are only if they're private. If you make them public, which I think the project says make them private, I don't remember.
Yeah, most of them are private.
Okay, so yeah, for those private ones that you want access to, you should make setters and getters. And generally, the best practice for getters and setters is to just write them as you need them. That way, you don't have a getter or setter existing for a variable that you never really access. And usually, the nice thing about IntelliJ is it'll mark if you ever call a method or not. So if you have a getter setter that's never used, the name will be like grayed out. That way you'll know, hey, we don't use this, so why even have it? Anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't sure about this, mainly because as sort of part of the print the balance statement, I made a toString overloaded function or overloaded method.
That's fine. That's fine
customer.
to do it.
Okay.
Just so that it has some way to do it.
I just wanted to double check because I wanted to make it easier for just if you were going to use this in some other system, then it's easier just to have a toString thing for your base.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Donovan had a question. In the ATM project, we use the various accounts found in the document when using the login option, right? Yes, correct. These are the users that you should have within your database, meaning when you're testing your program, you can only really log in as these people because no other record is going to exist in your database. And one of the things I do mention in the database, I believe, you should create this is the most important part, create an array of customer objects. So make sure you're, I've had people in the past like kind of ignore this and just create an array of strings. Don't do that. I mean, it's great that you would get you get multi-dimensional practice on strings, but that kind of structure is not appropriate here. We need to make sure we're using a array of customer strings, because if you think about it, each of these rows is a customer object, right? Because a customer object has a first name, last name, age, account ID, balance, PIN. These are all data that exist within that. So you need to make sure you're doing that. Any other questions? And the reason why I use an object there, just to be more explicit about it, these are all different data types, right? These are strings. First, last name are strings. Account ID, PIN, these are like all four of these are strings. This is the double. This is a integer. There's no way you're getting, I mean, I guess you can use a string to represent, but then, like you're just creating a lot more work for yourself than just creating an object that'll store these different data types for you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one quick question. Is there another way to like get a variable from another class besides using the getters and setters?
If it's public, you can
Because
just call it directly.
can you? Okay, because
yeah. So like let's say the string was let's say we make this public, right? Let's say string name is public. Then I can just do this. And I'll just systematic print it out. You can do that. And you'll get it right here. Yeah, sure, I can put this code on iLearn.
okay, because what's it called? I created a constructor with parameters that like cover all the stuff that we need, right? Like ID, bank account, PIN. And I realized that when I was on I think it was I forgot which class was it,
With
but
Lab 9 due
oh yeah,
today?
yeah, that's right. We're assigning objects to an
No,
array.
it's due May 7th.
Okay. Just double checking. Sorry, I'm sorry, I missed the last part of your question. You have a constructor where you have all the parameters for your customer object, and then what was the question?
Yeah, and then I like it has all the parameters, right? And then I created the multiple objects where I assigned each index of an array to like sorry, let me try to put it in words. Basically, I created an array, right? I initialized it to be set to 10 indices, and then I set each spot to be a customer object, but with each like parameter, right? So then like Bob or whatever is
So you
created.
did something like, suppose we had a patient array. New patient, like, let's say, Bob. Oh, we already have a Bob. Mary, 45. And then new patient, John, 14. Something like that.
Yeah, I just did it line by line, but that's basically what I did. And I now have a problem because I can't really get any of the variables because they're private. So should I just do getters and setters for every single person?
Let's say we have, you need getters or setters for the variables that you need to access. So if all the variables are private and you need access to all the variables, then yes, you should definitely have getters or setters for each. Again, getters or setters are something that you should write as you need them. So you're like, hey, the project tells me I need to access this variable, but that variable is private. So clearly, like, I have to create a getter setter, or just a getter, really. I don't necessarily also need you don't need a setter every time you make a getter, because for sometimes you don't want your user to be able to change the value of something. You just want them to be able to see what the value is. So, and the way I'd access a patient here, like let's say we want to get into Mary's records, our patients. 0 get name, it's going to print out Mary. And that was decent enough. So there, and we run this again, it's going to print out Mary before Bob. See, and if I say patient 0 or patient 1, who's going to print out this time?
John.
Exactly. But I guess your question was more so, I've done all this up to here. Now I just need to know how to get the variables, the private variables, and the private variables you need a getter for. Does that answer your question? Was that kind of what your question was? Okay.
Yeah, so you can use get name without even creating a getter per se, right?
No. I can only use this because I've created this method over here. I can't call a method that doesn't exist. Getters and setters aren't something baked into Java. These are something that you have to create. Just like a constructor. Only the default constructor is really baked into Java, but anything else, you need to create it yourself.
How would you do with each person then?
Well, you have a single customer object, right? You have a class customer. And then each instance of this class is a different person. But they all follow the same schematic. So when I create this over here, public string get name, when I create this method over here, anytime I create a new instance of the patient class, and over here, I've created 2 new instances of the patient class.
Oh, okay.
They all follow the schematic. So they each have the public get name built into them because the definition for that class has it. Not because Java just baseline puts a getter for every variable that you create.
Okay. Yeah, like as soon as I think I know this stuff, like, I don't know.
It takes time. It took me a long time to understand classes too. It just takes a lot of practice. And yeah, if you're completely new to all this is going to feel really alien because it's a very different way of thinking.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. That's why I'm here. As I'm telling you guys, ask these questions because it's better that you figure it out here and take the class time to figure stuff out than to be like, you know what, screw it, I just want to go home early and, I'm just going to stay quiet. Any other questions? All right, if there's nothing else.
Wait, I do have one quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Are the pins case specific?
Are the pins case specific?
Yeah, for Project 9. It doesn't mention it, but all of them are uppercase for any letters that are in them. So
yes, they should be case sensitive.
It
just so happens that these are all uppercase, but yes, it should be case sensitive because these are strings. Good question.
Okay. Just had to double check because I do have it case sensitive right now, and if it wasn't, then it could throw an issue later down the line.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that they're case sensitive, right? Because in a real bank, they would be case sensitive. Like this, if this E was lowercase, then it's gonna, if the user made a typo and entered the wrong pin, it shouldn't be like, oh, well, yeah, I recognize that this is still the right pin. Because there could be someone who has a lowercase e and another person that has an uppercase e.
That's fair. I was just thinking, like, with the pin keyboards, sometimes it doesn't give you an option of upper and lower. It's just sort of, hold or press 3 times and it gives you a letter.
Yeah.
Or press 2 times like an old cool like phone keypad. So that's what I was thinking it might be working like. Thanks for the clarification on that.
No problem. Any other questions? All right. Well, best of luck, guys, on Milestone 3 and Chapter 9 Lab, and I'll call it here. I'll post up this code on iLearn as well.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good weekend.